Okay, we are live, everybody. Brett, you were just saying how much you enjoyed my Women's March video?
You goddamn shill.
Apropos of
Yeah. Just
I'm a shill of the feminazi Jew-spiracy or something.
yeah. I mean, it was actually very heartening seeing a shit ton of
Millions
people
of
out
people,
there who were
yeah.
just pissed off and who felt that they needed to get their voices heard. Because I have been arguing with one of my friends who's been one of those people who's been like, he didn't vote at all.
Yeah.
Because he said he didn't like either candidate, what the fuck ever. But also he's like, oh, we should give Trump a chance to actually do something bad before we get all up in arms. And I'm like, have you even been paying attention to the news? Like it was like
right.
like not even after he was elected he started doing terrible shit. Before he was elected, it's already like, here's what we're gonna do, here's what I'm gonna put in the office, here's the policies I'm gonna enact, and here's the good policies I'm gonna get rid of. And it's like, dude, you have more than enough evidence to prejudge him before he gets into
No, it's not even prejudging. It's just judging.
Okay, yes.
Right, yes.
Good, excellent point.
It's like that's and a lot of times I think sometimes it's people are just honestly poorly informed and they're not intending to say anything misleading, but I think other times people are just willfully saying shit that isn't true, because like one of the popular talking points is well, nobody ever accused Donald Trump of being racist before he ran for president. That is bullshit. That is total bullshit. Lots of people knew that he had incredibly backwards, ignorant attitudes toward black folks, toward people of color for years. The fucking federal government sued him twice for housing discrimination in the 80s. This idea that, people love Donald Trump. Everybody knew that he was a great guy until he ran for president. No, people knew he was an asshole forever. Where have you been?
And people, too, who are expecting him to pivot. They had this delusion when he got the nomination for the Republican Party, and like, oh, well, now he's going to run a more general election campaign and he's going to be more presidential. And here's like, you just watched him not do that. So I don't understand people who actually thought after he won the election that he was going to pivot and be more presidential. It's just
he has to run for re-election.
You see in the football for these people.
Yeah, keep waiting. Well, I go ahead.
The pivot I was waiting for, because I remember Trump saying on some late night show that once he became president, he wouldn't have time to make his hair look the way he did, and he would just slick it back. I'm still waiting for that.
So he can look like even more of an asshole.
Who's waiting for the sun to rise in the west?
Right, exactly. But that's
I'm waiting for it to explode.
The fact that he doesn't even he's not even able to make that tiny little change should tell you something. Like when the one change he admitted he might make was, maybe I'll just do my hair a little different so it doesn't take as much time. And he's not even doing that. So what does that tell you about his willingness to adjust? Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this morning, because like now there are one or two Republicans who are meekly sort of starting to protest now that there are like people clogging all the international airports around the nation to protest the Muslim ban. Now a few Republicans are kind of going, maybe this was a bad idea. But of course, so far neither Pence nor Paul Ryan have condemned it, even though they said it was a terrible idea and against our values like 2 years ago when Trump first proposed it. Now they're just like, oh well, I guess this is okay.
No, it's perfectly fine to violate the Constitution as long as it's along party lines, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that Republicans, at least like Republican politicians, Republicans in Congress, they're only actually Republicans when there's a Democrat in the White House. When there's a Republican in the White House, they become monarchists, and whatever the president who is on our team wants to do, it's okay with us. That has been the pattern for as long as I can remember. When it's a Democrat, it's, oh, the president has limited powers. He shouldn't be doing this. He should only be doing things that has the enumerated authority in the Constitution to do. And what about Congress? And what about separation of powers? And the court shouldn't be an activist court, and blah, blah, blah. But as soon as there's a Republican in charge, it's, hey, whatever. Let's just do whatever we want.
Throw out the rule book.
Yeah, You know, I'm not personally affected, but I have a friend, someone that I met in Cologne, Iranian. He's basically a secular atheist. He goes back to Iran. He's got to oh God, I've got to deal with all this crap again. And he was a postdoc here in a physics department and was hired to work at a university in the Midwest on physics programs. And now if there's an emergency with his family, he can't go home to be with his family because he might not get back into the country, even though he's got a legal work visa. He's not got a green card because he hasn't been around, he hasn't been in the States long enough. But, there was no thought given to the practical and real life applications of this policy. It's terrifying that a man so thoughtless and unreflective can just think that by signing a piece of paper, he can make the world in the image that he wants, rather than actually getting the advice of experts on the consequences of this and rolling out a policy over months, not overnight.
The hell of it is that's what he's been selling from letter A, that he's just, it's going to be dictate. And I mean, how often did he talk about working with Congress? Answer, not bloody much. I mean, he thinks it's his ball, his bat, his game, and he's going to do it the way he wants to do it. And anybody doesn't like it, can go to the back of the line. I mean, I've said it multiple times. He's due for a wake-up call, and I just wish the wake-up call would hurry its ass up and get here.
There's something I've learned. I'm going to say this last thing and then I'll shut up. Something I've learned living in Europe is that you can't judge a person by their government. And gosh knows that a lot of times around the world, America would not, when they're tourists, they don't want to be judged by the actions of their governments. So this idea that you can equate people because of their residence with what they're thinking, it's just so wrongheaded, and it's going to do more to alienate people than to make us safer. So I'll be quiet now because I know a lot of people have views on this. My last point.
I'm just glad that the ACLU won that appeal for the emergency stay on the executive order.
Yeah. Here's a question, too. How much time is Trump going to want to spend fighting, the ACLU? And, ultimately, he's going to run afoul of FFRF and Americans United, American Atheists, and every other, probably the American Humanist Organization. Eventually, I got to believe that the American Center for Science Education is going to be getting in his face as well. He's going to be spending all his time fighting lawsuits.
So
I really hope that one of these lawsuits eventually leads to him getting impeached.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice?
Or just rage quitting.
Yeah, that would be.
Almost seems more likely with the Republican Congress.
Yeah.
I don't know. At this point, I honestly think I'd prefer Pence.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't think Pence will sink the country. He may make things terrible, but at least he's not going to.
He'll be opposed as vigorously, I suspect, as Trump is being opposed. But the thing is, Trump doesn't have a clue about what he's doing or the impact of his actions.
But that's when you get atheists going, give us the evangelical Christian. The evangelical Christian is way more sane than the guy. Come on, bring it on. We can handle this.
Well, it's like it's the difference. I think we've brought this point up before. I think we brought this point up in the last Hangout. Like it's you don't want either one. Like Pence and Trump, you don't want either disease. But one of the diseases is just going to make you really sick for a while, but you should be able to recover. While the other one might actually kill you.
There's a marked difference between a dose of the flu and bubonic plague, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I think I made that point in the.
Yeah, you did, Anya.
Yeah.
What was it? Different kinds of if you had to pick what type of cancer you had to have.
It's still cancer.
I'll take the one that's less likely to launch a nuke.
I'll take the one that's less likely to metastasize.
Here. I'll second that one.
Yeah, it's but I wouldn't bet on him being impeached. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how many lawsuits would he have to lose to the ACLU before the Republicans in Congress finally decided, hey, maybe this guy shouldn't be president? Maybe he has no idea what he's doing.
It's a matter of lawsuits. It's a matter of actions he takes that are clearly unconstitutional.
Yeah, I mean, it's protests shutting down airports.
Yeah, that's it. And here's another thing. I mean, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but there is a pending march of scientists on Washington.
I have seen that.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah,
yes.
I'm totally going to that one.
And as an engineer, I may not go to Washington, D.C., but there's talk about organizing one here in Cleveland.
Yeah.
I am there.
There's going to be that in May. There's going to be an immigrants march. And hopefully that'll be the same deal as the Women's March, where there'll be a big one in DC and then satellite marches all over the country.
Yeah.
I am really looking forward to that one. Actually, that one, the Immigrants March they've already set a date for it. It's May 6th, which is the day after my birthday. So I'm really looking forward to going to that one.
I want to make a point about the Women's March that I think is very important, and that is in that it is unprecedented. You name me a time in history when so many people in so many countries came together. I mean, I was pulling up stuff. There was this wonderful photo gallery on CBS News that talked about the march, and I was just gathering up stuff for a blog I want to publish next month. I came up with over 24 cities worldwide, and I'm not even talking about the United States yet. 24 cities, everything. I mean, Ghana. You know, I mean,
every continent.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I gotta wonder if Trump has even ever heard of Ghana.
No, it's all just Africa to him.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a Palinism if I ever heard one.
Is that Africa?
I think where we need to go next is, honestly, I think we need another Women's March next year, but the focus should be on training people in grassroots organizing and community organizing and direct action and getting out the vote. Because if we can harness those individuals who were inspired by this year's march, I mean, we have a countdown, I think, now to especially the next presidential election. But I don't want it to be the one Women's March and then that's it. I understand that it's given a lot of people a lot of energy. It's done a lot of great intersectional stuff. People who might not have been aware of other issues are allying, I think, with people. People feel more emboldened to come out and protest against the racist policies that they see. But I think because the Women's March now is sort of a brand, I think I'm going to make a video about this, that we need to start thinking about next year's march, but not just for the numbers, but actually to do like a weekend where we do training and we get people to run for office and we train them in that, or in fundraising, or whatever else you want to do to just, take it in a direction where we actually harness the energy into something that's a direct action.
The one
I would just point out, I've heard that a lot of organizations that have programs to train women to run for office have all seen increased enrollment since the election. Emerge Pennsylvania was saying since just the week after the election, they received 60 new applications.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't think this is a one-shot deal. I mean, I read an article that a couple days after the march, there were people flooding into their representatives' offices and just flooding them with calls. So this is nowhere near the end. It wasn't even the beginning. We'd already started. It feels like.
The other positive thing too, sorry to keep butting in, but this is politics, so I get really excited. This morning, somebody in the UK posted a petition to the UK government and Parliament reading, "Prevent Donald Trump from making a state visit to the United Kingdom." Donald Trump should be allowed to enter in his capacity as head of the U.S. government, but he should not be invited to make an official state visit because it would cause embarrassment to Her Majesty the Queen. Now, when I posted this on my Facebook about 3 hours ago, it was at 170,000 signatures. And I'm looking at it right now, and it's at 427,000, and it's going up by about 1,000 a minute, according to media reports. It's about to pass the second most populous petition, which was to ban Donald Trump from entering the UK.
Wow.
I think that is actually that would be almost better than like a petition to just ban him from the country, because like saying, well, he can't come in the country is a little authoritarian, but saying, no, he's free to come to the country. He can come visit the UK if he wants, but he's not going to have an official meeting with the Queen or with the members of Parliament, because that's
well, he would have his governmental role, so he would still meet with members of the government, because
but he wouldn't meet
he's the head of state and the head of government, whereas in Britain the government is the head of government and the Queen is the head of state,
so he wouldn't meet with the
right.
And I can't help but notice that when May and Trump were together in that news conference, whatever they had, Trump was cooling it. Trump was awfully damn quiet in that business. I think, up against somebody who actually knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
I think she spanked him, like literally.
I'll tell you a little OTK wouldn't hurt old Donnie at all. You want my honest opinion?
Well, but that's how Trump is all the time, though. He's two-faced, and when he's in a room with someone who he knows is able and willing to stand up to him, he becomes a coward. Because that's because he's a bully. That's how bullies are.
Exactly.
They talk a lot of shit when they're in their element and they're surrounded by people who they know will support them. But when they're faced with opposition, they curl up into a ball. That's how he was when he met with Obama the first time. He spent the entire.
It's the exact same deer in the headlights look that I would see on my classmates if they hadn't done the reading.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Well, yeah, because he spent his whole campaign talking about how Barack Obama was such a terrible president. Barack Obama has run this country into the ground. It's terrible leadership. Barack Obama was so bad there won't be another black president for 20 years. Just to remind us how not racist he is. And and then he meets with Obama and he's like, oh, he's such a good man. He's a really good man. But motherfucker, don't.
Yeah, if you got something to say it to his face.
Yeah.
Or disavow it. And that's been my line from the beginning. I'll tell you what, I think, and it's obvious on the face of it, but we may have Donald Trump to thank for finally getting people a little bit more politically aware and politically active. I mean, if nothing else was going to accomplish it, at least we have Donald Trump to solidify an opposition that is going to be an active opposition.
I'd like to think so, but
I hope so.
Well, I mean, he's pissed me off to the point where, I mean, I haven't revved up my, I don't know if I'm going to rev up my word processor and actually write the president. Because I don't think he'd read it, and B, I think he'd just blow it off. But my senators, my Congress people,
oh, definitely.
Don't just write. Visit.
I've written the Government Accountability Office in favor of Elizabeth Warren's proposed, forcing Trump to release his tax stuff.
Yeah, that I would maintain the pressure on that regardless. Oh, and here's something else as it comes to that. As a member of the FFRF, we've had an ongoing business going on here for doing secular invocations in local governments and such like. One of our members may be getting down the road towards doing something in Columbus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is I think is exceptionally cool. Yeah. And I may be saddling up to do something very similar if depending upon what goes on with that. I mean, I don't want to waste energy if it's, they're just going to blow us off. Oh, which reminds me, we got a bit of bad news the other day. I don't know how many of you are aware of Mike Nudo's In God We Trust.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sadly, it fell on its face. I mean, basically, the judge threw the case out. Said, "Oh, this doesn't bother you guys at all."
That's surprising.
Like he knows what's going on with us. The only thing I would say is that if you're going to have a national motto, the national motto should be representative of all the people. And I can think of nothing that is more representative than E pluribus unum, out of many, one. I love the concept of that.
And or pronounced in correct Latin, a pluribus unum.
Show off.
Look, Latin class was 50 years ago for me. Give me a break, right?
Okay.
We don't pronounce it that way in this country.
I want to back up John's point.
Classical Latinist.
Go ahead.
About in-person visits. That's really the way to go. There was a video I circulated with Steve Wright, I think, who used to represent New York, saying the best thing you can do is go to a live event. So call up your Congress local office and ask them when the next time the congressman or the senator is going to be in your area, and then turn up at those events and ask them hard questions. Why did you support this nominee? Are you going to vote to take away people's health care? Because it's in-person stuff that has a big impact. So John was right on that.
I'm giving some thought to that, Christy. I mean, it's one of the wonderful things about being retired is my time is my own. Of course, one of the not so great things is disposable cash is at a premium, so I have to be careful.
But yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, as was demonstrated in a small way last month, with or earlier this month, I suppose, with the the move to gut the congressional
ethics office.
Yeah. If you make a big enough noise and you rise up loud enough and let them know, hey, we're not going to sit still for this. You can't do this. They can be backed down.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can convince my mom or my dad, or my dad, to fly out for the Immigrants March, because they did immigrate from Canada.
Yeah.
So
I mean-
they are technically immigrants. I mean, I was born in America, but they weren't. They were born in Canada. That's why I have Canadian citizenship.
I'm
Yeah.
I
an
am so
immigrant in
thankful
Germany.
for.
Yeah, I'm an immigrant in Germany, and if they suddenly decided to ban all U.S. travel, I would be in a terrible position. So I
Yeah.
understand where people are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I just the whole thing with the immigrant and the refugee ban is just so. I mean, it's difficult to imagine how anyone could be okay with that. You know, no matter whether you think that like the immigration policy that we currently have is adequate or if it's completely upside down. Like, I find it so difficult to believe that people would be like, oh yeah, we'll ban people from all these Muslim countries. That sounds
They're
like a good
brown
idea.
and not Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, okay. I talk about this in a video that I'm putting up tomorrow. My off Monday ramble, but you just reminded me, John. Because one of the justifications that Trump gave in an interview to CBN News, which is the 700 Club, that's who the president of the United States is talking to. He said the reason that he wants to give preferential treatment to Christian refugees from these war-torn areas is because for the last few years it's been more difficult for Christian refugees to get in. He said if you're a Muslim we let you right in, but Christians it's more difficult to get in. So the New York Times published the numbers. The New York Times published the numbers, and last year, the number of Christian refugees admitted to the country and the number of Muslim refugees admitted to the country was virtually identical. There was no, it wasn't like 85% Muslims, 15%. It was virtually 50-50.
Which
Alternative
doesn't even
facts.
sound proportionally like for the countries they're coming from.
No,
Exactly.
No,
not
not
at all.
remotely. I mean, what percentage of Syria is Muslim? It's got to be well into the 90s.
Overwhelmingly. So if anything, judging by the demographics of the country, Christians already have a huge advantage because they're overly represented in the number of refugees.
And it's one thing if you want to cite something like the Yazidi Christians in Iraq who are getting hammered by ISIS. I mean, those poor people have been through the ringer. But I mean, you don't favor them to the exclusion of these people in Aleppo who, I mean, they've been living in a war zone for 5 years. And I mean, anybody here's there's a marvelous YouTube video that takes you through Aleppo. I think they use a drone to photograph it. Scary. In one word, I mean, they'll have to rebuild Aleppo from the ground up. I have to wonder if there's a single building left in that city that is structurally sound.
Trying to keep the Muslims out of America thing, the refugees especially, is just such a heartless way to look at things. I mean, these are people who are in need. Who gives a shit what their religion is? Like, honestly, what the fuck is wrong with these people?
And on was it the day before, the day of Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Where he released like a proclamation that didn't mention Jewish people at all in remembrance of the Holocaust.
Oh God!
I mean, like, it just doesn't get like how much more obvious does it have to be?
And how much more absurd?
Trump, your son-in-law is Jewish. Your daughter converted to Judaism. At least give them
He's got the best Jews,
acknowledgement.
so he doesn't need on the others.
I have all the best Jews.
Both of them.
Both of the best Jews are on my team.
And I think one of the things we have to fight back against
they've
in
got 3
particular
kids.
Well, it's not just a matter of his being religiously, utterly, not quite colorblind because of this whole business of the Christians. I mean, I don't think he really has a sense of history. He doesn't really have a sense of what's gone on in the past. Mostly, ultimately, I don't think he even cares. I mean, all he cares about is wanting to make a show so that he looks good and that he looks like he's accomplishing something that is supposedly positive without looking not even remotely past the surface.
No.
The only thing he has a good sense of is drama.
Yes. Somebody on the Diane Rehm show a long time ago said what Trump does better than anything else is TV. I mentioned this, I think, once before. I mean, he understands TV up, down, and sideways, and the whole P.T. Barnum thing going right along with that. I mean, he's ultimately he is a 21st century P.T. Barnum.
Well, that's why he's so that and his ego are, I think, the reasons why he's so preoccupied with like the size of his crowds. You know, he wants to be. Oh, look at all the people. He wants to see. Oh, look at all the people who are watching me. That means I'm a success. If all these people watch me.
Argumentum ad populum.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and it's not even true. It's not even a real argumentum ad populum because he's not even popular.
I know! It's a failure, even as the fallacy it's supposed to be.
You can't even use the fallacy right.
I like there was this one photo I saw where they showed this inauguration crowd and goes, it was just the bad resolution of the photo, and they acted like they were zoomed in on a part, and they showed like the white part was all KKK.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's like, I mean, that thing about the photos where they say, well, look, here's this photo that proves it was a massive crowd, and it's from a completely different angle, and it's a low angle close to the crowd, so everything stretches out and it hides the empty spaces. Okay, if you have an overhead photo that shows that the mall was packed with people, let's see it. Where's the picture? Because the photos that prove that the crowd was a lot smaller than they said it was were the overhead skycam photos that show everything from a high angle so you can see all the empty space. Well, then show me a photo from that angle from that day that shows that everything was packed with people. That's all you have to do. And the fact that you're incapable of doing that, I think, says it all.
Well, the real incapability in the Trump administration, one word: concession. They don't know how.
No.
Well, also consent, just to run with the.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun fact. So yesterday was Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. It's the year of the rooster, which is my year. Yay! But so I decided to look up what Trump's sign was, and now we can all have the excuse when we call him a dog that we're just talking about his Chinese sign. Also, fun thing, apparently, according to his Chinese zodiac, he should avoid the color gold. It's unlucky for him. And I should be the one using the color gold because roosters benefit from bright colors. No, I'm wearing black. I'm gonna wear black. I don't fucking care.
Let's hope that gold is unlucky for him. Let's hope for all our sakes.
Hope so.
Has been so far.
Yeah.
Oh, also, the Chinese zodiac is oddly correct in saying that Donald Trump and I are completely incompatible.
Yeah, year of the cock. Exactly. I had the same thought, Ken. Ken just posted in the chat. Year of the cock. Exactly. It'll be 4 years of the cock.
Hey, I'm year of the rooster. Donald Trump is year of the dog, so he's a literal son of a bitch.
So hey, tell you what. How about we grab him by the phallus?
Hey, now you're talking. The phallus E.
I don't know. I don't want to get my hands anywhere near it.
Yeah,
Wear gloves.
Wear gloves and make sure you wash your hands afterwards, even though you did have the gloves on.
Just
to
burn your hands off.
Like I would wear the kind of gloves that I would use if I was doing fire whip.
Yes. Big like asbestos barbecue gloves. Just ugh.
I'll tell you what. There's some gloves I've seen used when people have to deal with exceptionally high voltages. They're about like a half-inch thick. They come all the way up to at least up to your elbow. I think you pay like a couple $100 each for get a pair. I mean, yeah. Actually,
okay, you wear those, and under them you wear rubber gloves for like cleaning a sink, and under them you wear like normal, cold weather gloves, and then under them you wear surgical gloves. 4 layers of gloves.
Yeah, just maybe some EVA gloves from an astronaut. Just
oh yeah, definitely.
Actually, don't even bother with this stuff. Just kick him in the nuts.
Yeah,
well,
I'll do that. I'll do that.
I can buy new shoes.
A new pair of shoes is worth it.
Those shoes are going on display anyway.
Yeah, the shoes. Save the shoes. Actually, they'll be in the Smithsonian.
Yeah,
the shoes that kicked Donald Trump in the nuts.
Yeah, or maybe in his presidential library.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
The shoes that kicked him in his presidential library. That is his presidential library.
Can you imagine?
Empty. The fucker can't read.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you imagine a structure that'd be more pointless than Donald Trump's presidential library?
I know. What do you need a whole library for? You can put all the tweets on an iPad.
Oh, jeez.
You don't need a whole library
for Trump.
No, you need to print them out.
I hope that when they make a presidential library for Donald Trump, it is introduced with the phrase "Never again."
Yes.
Here,
We're
here.
so sorry.
This is everything he tweeted for those 2 weeks.
That's gonna be the first library built as a warning. Jesus.
Yes. Pay attention, future generations.
Just put a sign, Trump Presidential Library outside of a tire fire.
Nah.
People will visit it gravely, soberly, like they're going to the Vietnam Memorial.
The Holocaust.
Go to the
Museum.
Trump Library, everybody.
I was thinking of a question earlier. Has there ever been such an unprepared president in the history of the United States?
I mean,
Nero,
Nope.
Caligula.
Nero's. Nobody. I mean, do you remember the good old days when we thought that George W. Bush was unprepared? I mean, and
Oh my God.
he was a governor for 4 years.
We said the same thing about Reagan, and he was an actor turned governor, but at least he was governor.
At least he had.
He had at least he had some exposure to the process. Trump has had none. You'd swear that Trump never even so much as took a civics class.
Yeah. Well,
Pretty much.
It probably hasn't.
Somebody probably took it for him.
Yeah, exactly. His proxy. He sent proxies to all of his classes. Isn't that the way it works? Yeah, I just
paid the nerd to write my papers for me.
I'm a job creator.
I mean, the comparison that I have occasionally made and other people have made is Andrew Jackson, but Jackson at least had military experience. And even though Jackson was, I think, an asshole and a bad president,
raging asshole.
You can at least, if you look really hard, you can find things about Jackson that are somewhat admirable if you can sort of break them off from the rest of him. But I mean, Trump, I don't see anything either admirable or that lends itself to being the president at all. Like there's just nothing there. So I think he probably would be the least prepared.
I mean,
he really wanted it.
Eisenhower, I mean, he was the head up of SHAEF, of course, during World War II, and he planned, the Normandy invasion and all that. On the downside, though, he's also the one that really helped grease the wheels. And for those of you who've read Kevin Cruz's book, In God We Trust, How Corporate America Invented Religious America, or Christian America, I should say. He did a lot of the greasy wheels on that. Apparently, his first inauguration was almost a religious ceremony.
Oh, Ike.
Yeah,
I wanted to like you so bad, Ike.
Yeah. Well, I feel very much the same. I used to think he was at least a reasonable president, and of course, I have to respect him for the whole business of the military-industrial complex speech that he gave. Not that anybody apparently listened. But
yeah, everybody must have taped over that one.
No, they agreed with him except for their district.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they got to bring in the pork.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's the other thing that troubles me is because one of the big excuses that people would make for Trump leading up to the actual inauguration was, he'll have all these people around him who will keep him in line, like he'll have reasonable Republicans, in the administration that will keep him from doing anything too wacky. And, I remember just a couple weeks ago when he was pressed on the immigration reform things that he wants to do, that he's now actually trying to do, and the refugee bit and registering Muslims and all this. And one of his, not Trump, but one of his supporters, I think a member of Congress actually, brought up the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II as a historical precedent. And everybody
as a positive historical?
Yes. And everybody was like, yeah, but aren't we really super ashamed of that now? Don't we all agree that was a terrible mistake and we shouldn't have? Isn't that like the big fucking blemish on FDR's legacy? Isn't that like
somebody cue George Takei?
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
That was a terrible mistake, right? It's like saying, well,
someone get Uncle George in here.
I mean, that's like saying, well,
Sorry, George actually asked
You're
right about
expecting
that.
them to say we turned away Jews, so it's okay to turn away Muslims. It's
Exactly. Or well, what's wrong with rounding up all the immigrants and putting them in camps? We did that to the Indians. Like,
Sorry.
They're like, let's declare martial law. Lincoln did that. Everyone was cool with that, right?
Hey, Lincoln suspended constitutional rights. Come on, what's the big deal? Like, God, what is wrong with you people?
Everything.
It's like, yeah, that's what Lincoln's remembered fondly for, suspending habeas corpus. That's why we all love Lincoln. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
What are you talking about habeas corpus? I don't speak German.
Yeah.
Das noch.
Sounds like Nazi talk to me.
It sounds like Nazi talk to me.
Or is that Russian? Are you a commie?
We need to get. Can we just like de-age all the grizzled World War II veterans? Can we just bring them back to their?
The word Backpfeffengesicht in here? I'm probably pronouncing that horribly. Excuse my poor
Christy,
German.
Sorry, what was that again?
I caught Gesicht.
Gesicht. It's a word that means a face that needs to be punched.
Oh, Gesicht.
Nice.
Gesicht. Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, resist. Yeah.
Gesundheit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad beat me to it.
So yeah, that there is a word in German that means a face badly in need of a fist, and I it's Donald Trump.
Bless the Germans for having a word for it.
Yes, they have.
I know,
like,
right? That's great.
Schadenfreude and Zeitgeist. They have a way with really complicated compound nouns.
The Germans.
Yeah,
are
well,
like,
that's
we
what
need
they
words
do.
for
They
this.
take multiple nouns, they shove them together, they throw in an occasional adjective, and they create, Uberhasenburst.
I think you went into Swedish.
That's
there,
Swedish.
Oh, well.
There.
They say we don't. Why have a phrase when you can just have a word?
Right.
A word that runs to 30 characters.
Ancient Greek did that a lot too. Actually, modern German and ancient Greek have a surprising.
Yeah.
Oh, she dropped out.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
that's interesting. I like learning language stuff.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard anything else? Because you remember back in June of last year, they were talking about the House Un-American Activities Committee. I don't hear anything else about that. Do we know if that's a thing anyone's considering anymore?
I can actually speak to that a little bit because it sort of came up in the last video I did, which was on people who claim to be defenders of free speech, calling on them to speak out against what Trump is doing with his presidential powers. And one of the things in there was Newt Gingrich had both called for Madonna to be jailed for that comment where she said, I've thought about blowing up the White House, but, that won't solve anything. We can't fall into despair. And he said she should be jailed for that. And then he also did something else douchey. And in the other douchey thing, it was saying federal employees should be fired because they all voted for Clinton. And they won't get any real change until you fire all the employees who voted for Clinton. So on that, I had a picture, and it was the Un-American Activities Committee, and it was Newt Gingrich who recommended it. It was back in June, and nothing has been. I haven't seen anything about it since.
How do you say these things and not realize how blatantly,
at
least unethical, probably illegal, most certainly illegal, but definitely.
Remember, they want to make America great again by going back to that era.
McCarthy, I guess.
You do it by
Thank
not
you.
caring. But they may have partially gotten their wish. Has anybody else read that story about how a great amount of the State Department senior staff has resigned?
They resigned, yeah.
Yeah. But how do you replace people like that? And how long has some of those guys been in there? What's their tenure? What's their range dates of service? Those are people you don't hire fresh grads for those positions, people.
No. Well, I heard a story
Did they
about
resign,
that.
or were they told to resign? I mean,
my impression was they resigned, of their own volition.
Exactly. Yeah, there's I haven't seen it in a lot of places, but the Washington Post I know has covered it. So
yeah, I heard a story about it on NPR last week, and most of them were veterans or people who were in very senior positions who had been there for years. But a few of them were actually younger people who could have had very long careers at the State Department and chose to leave because they weren't gonna. One of them was a guy who works for the State Department in Ukraine, and they interviewed him for this story, and he's only a little bit older than I am. And he could have worked at the State Department for another 20 years and had a very comfortable retirement. And he resigned because he said, I won't put myself in a position where I would have to carry out Donald Trump's foreign policy.
Hmm.
You know, and like, I have no idea what I'm going to do now. For now, he and his family are going to stay in Ukraine because he doesn't know where else to go. But I mean, he turned his back on what was probably going to be a very long, prosperous career because he said, I'm not doing this, you know?
Well, do you really want to hate your job for that long?
Yeah. Well, and who knows what you're going to have to do? I mean, there is such a thing as having to look at yourself in the mirror. I mean,
my point exactly.
Not
in
everybody.
Ukraine, the State Department would probably be backing up Putin under Trump.
Yeah. I mean, some of us do have a conscience. I know that it's difficult for some people to believe, but there are certain things like I want to be able to live with myself. I want to be able to not be haunted by the voice in my head when I fall asleep every night and think that I've betrayed my own principles for my job. I mean, I don't know. And the number of people that seem to have no idea what that means is alarming. You know, the idea that like, well, why would you quit? It's a good job. Like,
Yeah.
dude.
Both of my grandfathers worked for the government, one for the State Department, the other for the Pentagon. And for the first time ever in my life, I am glad that they are not alive to see the direction government is going under Trump.
Yeah, I know. I know. I've had like similar thoughts as well. I have my grandmother-in-law, I guess, my wife's grandmother, passed away just last year. And I had the stray thought the other day, you know, I'm glad that Obama was the last president that she saw, you know, because she was actually a big fan of Barack Obama. And I thought to myself, like, you know, I'm glad that she left on that note, that she didn't have to exit in this shitty world that we're in right now, where, you know, I mean, can you imagine you're going to die your last moments on earth and the president of your country is Donald Trump? Oh, gee,
I would hold on just to see him leave.
And, you know, on the whole issue of Russia and Putin, you know, I know being in the States, Russia feels very far away, but now living in what used to be West Germany, Putin feels a lot closer, and his interference isn't just, you know, sort of his grabs like in the Ukraine, but, you know, he's now it's been shown that he can successfully work a disinformation campaign and upset Western democracies. And we have an election coming up in Germany. There are always elections going on. So, you know, will he choose to target another Western country to help give rise to a destabilizing far-right party? Because if nothing else, Donald Trump is keeping us so occupied. We're not paying attention to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I've read that Germany was already making accusations at Russia of trying to tamper with their election. Do you know if that's true?
I remember seeing there were concerns about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And as it comes to disinformation, let's keep in mind, Putin is ex-KGB. I mean, disinformation's their middle name.
Yeah. Don't fuck
you
with
can somehow
Germany.
get G to equate to disinformation.
Yeah. You know, that's what I always think of whenever Trump states his position that is even controversial within his own administration, that we should just get rid of NATO. I mean, his own Secretary of Defense says that that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And he
read him the Riot Act on that one too.
Yeah, and his excuse is, well, that was, you know, the Soviet Union's not around anymore. NATO's obsolete. And it's like, okay, but you know who's in charge of Russia, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's a great guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if he seems to like me, what's wrong with that? You know, it's like, okay, again, like, how much more obvious do we need to make this? If everybody else, including most other Republicans, are saying, what are you talking about? Get rid of NATO. Are you out of your mind? And Trump is saying, oh no, let's get rid of NATO. And by the way, I don't have a big problem with Vladimir Putin. If he likes me, I think that's great. Like, okay, does he need to show up to the office wearing like a Putin re-election T-shirt? Will that get the message across? You know,
they're turning me into a hawk on Russia.
Yeah, you mean you knew he was going to piss off some of our enemies, but you were like, does he have to alienate all our allies too?
Yeah, it's like okay, yeah, in theory, like a more cordial relationship with Russia would be nice.
Yeah,
if Russia was governed by more reputable people.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't being done at the cost of all of our other pre-existing alliances.
Yeah. Shall we also mention how long Russia has been under Putin and how much Putin has manipulated things so that he can stay in power?
Exactly. He did. Yeah, he did that bit where he was president for a while, and then he changed the law so the term limits were consecutive, so he could leave and then come back. And he was prime minister for 4 years, and then he came back and was president again. Like,
I wonder what was his name? Medvedev or something like
Medvedev.
Yeah. I wonder what he thinks of all this. I wonder if he's still alive.
Putin was just like, thanks for keeping my chair warm, buddy.
Yeah, that's about all it was.
Hit the bricks.
Mm-hmm.
But not only that, I mean, obviously he just tanked our relationship with Mexico for no reason. And then when Theresa May was here, the interactions were cordial, but his comments on torture, saying that he thinks torture works, well, that ended up blowing back on her when she got back to the UK, because that embarrassed her that she was, just with the president saying this thing, and her presence there, does that indicate that it changes UK policy? So he's throwing his friends under the bus, as well as tanking our relationships and cozying up to an authoritarian dictator.
He did say, though, that he was going to defer to whoever, I think the head of the, either was it head of the Joint Chiefs or Secretary of Defense regarding torture.
Yeah.
I mean, because I can cite him half a dozen different guys who actually have videos on YouTube where they will state unequivocally torture does not work.
Yeah. Well, and it's almost like nobody cares whether you think it works, Donald. You're a dipshit. You don't know anything. You think that voter fraud is real and that climate change isn't. So nobody cares what you think. You're wrong about everything.
Yeah, and on the topic of
go ahead.
On the topic of cozying up to the authoritarian dictator, all I have to say is this: birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it interesting how the Republicans were so upset about Obama issuing executive orders, and now they're completely silent when Trump has done nothing but issue executive orders his first week in office.
And it's completely unnecessary too. It's like if all the votes go party line, Donald Trump can get his way whatever he wants.
The thing is, he doesn't even want to bother with Congress.
And I kind of look at it too with Barack Obama. A lot of those executive orders came in when he was frustrated because he couldn't get anything moving. Where Donald Trump, it's day one, throwing them left and right.
I am the president, and that means that I am basically a king. Someone measure me for a crown. It's got to be gold. It's got to be very, very gold, and it's got to be huge.
It's going to be the best gold.
Yeah. But yeah, seriously though, I mean,
it's got to be like 20-karat gold.
Speaking of the deal with Mexico, though, I mean, I don't know how I'm like a huge fan of the president of Mexico now.
I know, me too.
I mean, and I know, my thought was, I mean, I don't blame the president of Mexico for canceling that meeting. Mexico has enough of its own problems. Why would he want to come here and get involved with Trump? That would just make things worse.
Yeah. And did you also see how quickly they marched back that business about putting a 20% tariff on imported goods? Yeah. Because all this, I mean, I'm not sure that was in the wind 12 hours, and all of a sudden it came out, hey, you know what? That goes on. It isn't Mexico paying for the damn wall. It's us. Exactly.
Exactly. Well, again, this is a point that I make in my video that goes up tomorrow, but it bears mentioning here. Like to me, the point of Mexico saying unequivocally now we're not paying for the wall, and then Trump saying, well, they're still going to pay for it. We're going to work out some kind of deal, but we're going to do a tax or we're going to do a tariff or whatever. Like, okay, but no. That's not what you were selling when you said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. When Trump got in front of his crowd of supporters and said, we're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it. Clearly, the implication was that Trump was so powerful and so awesome and such a great deal maker that he was going to back Mexico into a corner where they had no choice but to pay for the wall. It was all about the awesomeness of Trump. And that has been completely obliterated because Trump tried to push and pressure and bully the president of Mexico into coming here to meet with him about the border wall. And the president of Mexico said, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
No. It was, they agreed to cancel the meeting.
Oh, that's it. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
More alternative facts.
We mutually agreed to cancel the meeting. I'm pretty sure the president of Mexico said, "I'm not coming."
Yeah, on Twitter.
On Twitter. And then Donald said, "We mutually agreed to not."
Just make sure that Trump sees it by doing it on Twitter, of course.
Exactly.
And Lawrence O'Donnell made a wonderful point on that in saying that because Trump could not manage to get things to happen for him on that it amounted to a failed negotiation. This from the guy who's supposed to be the primo negotiator, the art of the deal, all that bullshit.
That's exactly my point. Exactly. He's
the art of the botched deal.
He sells himself as this unbeatable deal maker, and one of the signature deals that he promised in his campaign was we build the wall and Mexico pays for it. Less than a week into his presidency, that we know now that is definitely not going to happen.
Does he even know what a deal is? I mean, what he's proposing is basically extorting Mexico into paying for a wall. It's not a deal at all. Deals are compromise, man. You don't just say, we're going to build this thing that affects you negatively, and you're going to pay for it, which affects you negatively. Also, fuck you.
Yeah. And also, by the way, most of us don't want it. And experts on both sides of the border say it's not even going to work. It's not even going to do what it's supposed to do. So, the whole thing is just a complete clusterfuck. And
a huge
that's not the only policy that he's been had to do about face on, right? So apparently, I found this out after watching Rachel Maddow that the administration has changed its directive that you don't have to take down the climate science data anymore. The whole trying to control the message on climate change seems to not have worked at all. And then he had the executive order to stop all hirings until people freaked out about the VA and the fact that they need to hire people there if we're going to treat veterans. So they had to make an exception for every single job at the VA. They had to write them all out. And so, he's actually had, and now a federal judge struck down his executive order on the whole Muslim ban. So he's actually really sucking in terms of getting enforced what he wants to get done.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, he still has to hire a whole bunch of people to work at the White House yet.
Yeah. Never mind the State Department.
Well, there's people from The Apprentice, right?
And I would point out with the
it seems like he thinks he can do anything through executive order.
Yeah. Go ahead.
To be fair, apparently it does take a while to fill vacancies when a new president comes in. Typically, they don't create that many vacancies, and typically they do it faster, but still.
Yeah. Brett, you made a wonderful point a little while ago about the whole business of a compromise. Anybody know when Donald Trump has compromised ever?
He's compromised his integrity by running for president.
Well,
he didn't have any.
He was finally forced to admit that Barack Obama was a native-born citizen. That's not really a compromise; that's a concession.
Well, and he made it sound like that's not what he made it sound like. It wasn't a concession at all.
I proved it. Okay,
I never said that.
Yeah, it's like
how many times have we got? I've never said that. I'll tell you. I want to create a hell for Donald. I want to create a hell for Donald Trump, which has a room full of TV screens playing back every time he said something that he supposedly didn't say.
I just think that they should they should put a device on him that every time that he lies, it just shocks him.
Well, how about we modify his nose, pull a Pinocchio on him?
Nah.
Bye, Christy. Jacob, were you going to say something a minute ago?
No, I was just saying, like with the federal employee hiring freeze, they were saying like Trump was trying to say, that we have so many more federal employees now, like more than ever. And there's been like a rehiring surge since the end of the recession, but it's only up about 10% since Clinton administration. Yeah. And they were saying like its share of the actual U.S. workforce has gone way down.
Like,
like the rest of the everything else has grown, and the federal employee numbers really haven't. So it's yet another example of things that he's trying to sell as a problem, but actually the numbers say it isn't.
Yeah, well, that's been the MO so far of everything he's done, is to try and direct all the attention and resources toward imaginary problems, and completely ignore and deny the existence of the actual problems that we should really be worrying about. It's actually kind of amazing if you think about it, is that he paints this picture of the U.S. as being just this crumbling society in absolutely terrible condition, and yet he does so by not appealing to any of the actual problems that we have.
I think saying paints a picture is a little generous there.
Finger paints.
He's more like Jackson Pollock's, you know.
Explosive diarrhea.
About the only thing he's got right is we could definitely need to work on our infrastructure, which is something the Democrats do want to do and are willing to work with him on. Only thing is Trump's idea is a lot of horse shit where he wants to. I think he wants to let private companies toll roads and let them deal with it.
Yeah,
and
that's a great
Democrats, idea. Yeah, it's like that's not going to do anything. The Democrats are like, let's get a nice progressive plan together, hitting on all points of our infrastructure that might actually do something.
I just came up with the perfect analogy. Donald Trump is to politics as Stephanie Meyer is to writing. Horrible, but successful despite this.
That's
inexplicably popular.
Yeah.
And hopefully he will continue the trend by completely blowing up his own fan base with a very horrible decision.
Oh God, it boggles the mind what that decision could possibly be, though. Knowing
he's going to try and ban
his fan base.
Oh God, Trump in America, better love story than Twilight.
Well, he wants to get rid of people who have voter registration in multiple states, which includes most of his family.
Yeah. You know, I don't
Steve
think
Bannon, I think.
Yeah, you know, someone needs to sit these assholes down and explain to them that not every irregularity in voter registration is evidence of fraud. In fact,
they listen?
No. In fact, almost none of it is. Like they say, like Trump, and not just Trump, all these people who try to push this voter fraud narrative. They're all like, well, there's however many thousands of people who are registered to vote that are dead. Yeah, that's because your name doesn't get stricken from the rolls automatically when you die. It's not like the election commission people come to your house and talk to your family and say, "Oh, he's dead. We better take his name off."
They only do that if you're black.
Yeah, right. Or sometimes they don't even wait for you to die.
And occasionally there's some clerical errors, some issues with Social Security numbers, getting confusion. Like you said, it's just because there's an irregularity, it doesn't mean fraud.
And every time they've investigated those irregularities, they have found evidence of. Usually, they come up with absolutely nothing. Every once in a while, they'll come up with like one instance where they think it's like legitimate voter fraud that they need to do something about.
And then Trump hires him for his campaign.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's like the guy who Trump apparently is using as his source for the 3 million illegal votes lie, who is apparently basing his bullshit on a total misreading of an actual study, where the guy who was in charge of the study, I read on an article on CNN's website last week, I think, where the guy who wrote the actual study that is supposedly the basis of this whole thing came out and said, no, they're completely misinterpreting my results. When we dug into it, we found no evidence whatsoever that would suggest that there was widespread illegal voting in the election at all. They're either completely getting it wrong, or they're willfully lying about it. They're just making it up. Which
which one?
Whereupon Trump says, "Oh, you're not saying what I want you to say anymore. I heard you the first time," sort of crap, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh boy, but I mean, the good, like we were saying earlier, I mean, the good news is there is some inspiration to be taken from just how many people have shown that we're not willing to sit still for it.
He's getting blowback, and a lot of it.
He's getting major blowback, and that is very good to see. And I mean, what might, if nothing else, what might eventually push enough Republicans to, maybe they couldn't necessarily impeach him for this, but they could sort of, show up at the Oval Office and close the door and say, "Hey, guess what? You have to go. You have to resign," because they could say, "Look, the country is not governable with you as president." Like if there's going to be a protest or a march or thousands of people showing up outside of our offices every time you say you're going to do something like this isn't going to work. You have to go. And yeah, maybe he would just say no.
In which case they might have to impeach him.
In which case they would have to impeach him. But But see, but the thing is, like, what if that meeting took place? Somebody would find out about it. Like, it wouldn't just be a super secret closed door meeting. Like, somebody in the White House or somebody in that room would leak something to somebody in the media, and pretty soon we would all know. Oh, hey, a bunch of Republicans went to Donald Trump's office and told him to quit because they can't have him. They can't run the country with him as president. And once you get to that point, like, I mean, it's only a matter of time. And whatever lie he has to tell himself and the rest of us about what is really happening to get his ass out of there is fine at that point. Yeah. If he wants to blame the Republicans for not working with him, if he wants to try and throw everybody else under the bus and talk about how, like, oh, I wanted to do all these great things for the country, but they wouldn't let me do it. Whatever, fine. Just go. Just leave. So I don't know, maybe something like that could be in the future. But again, I mean, I wouldn't count on that either. I would count on, like, staying loud, staying active, and staying involved. And if nothing else, like, show up at your polling place in 2018 and vote for the most progressive people you can find on that ballot. And and throw the bums out, as they say.
I love that we had a national flash mob last night.
Yes, wasn't that awesome?
Trump.
What was that?
The airport protests.
Oh, that was basically what it was.
Yes.
They basically amounted to a nationwide flash mob. Well, and in a way, that was almost as inspiring to me, or more inspiring than the Women's March, because the Women's March was organized and was announced months ahead of time, and everybody had time to figure out their plans and to go. That airport protest that took place last night was like a spur of the moment thing. Everybody was like, "We got to go."
That was great.
That was amazing. So yeah, I mean, there are reasons to hope. You know what I mean? All right, folks.
It would be great.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Trump gets impeached, on the day that he's impeached, we all need to stand up and yell, "You're fired!"
I'll second that wholeheartedly.
Let's do that. That's perfect. Anya's just dropping gold this month. All right, everybody.
I swear, like 10% of my brain is witty retorts.
That's a good percentage. You don't want it to be too high. You need to have room for, like, functional stuff. But
oh no, like 50% of it is movie references.
Oh well, that's okay.
Oh, good. Then you still follow what you said. Yeah.
And book
so you
references.
Still have 40%. But so it's 40% for, like, necessary functions.
Well, yeah, I think only 10% of it is actually necessary functions. The other 30% is random trivia of varying usefulness.
Well,
if that's the case, go on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
I mean, not like Jeopardy level trivia, more like random fandom things and Tolkien languages.
Stuff that doesn't even rise to the level of Jeopardy question.
Yeah. Basically stuff that just cements me as the biggest nerd.
It doesn't even rise to the level of Wheel of Fortune.
Nice. I just saw that at the Philadelphia airport, the governor of Pennsylvania is there now.
Oh, great.
Ooh.
Plus, one of my U.S. senators is there.
Good. That's what we need to see, man.
Yes.
Last night my U.S. senator was trying to get in touch with the people detained there to make sure they knew what their rights were.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be on our side. Like, it's good to see that they are. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely proud of this too right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Once you're done, give them a kiss.
Don't make it weird.
That's what I do.
Don't make it weird, Brett. All right, we have to wrap this up, everybody. It's been an awesome hour. It's always a great time for me to hang out with you all, and for you, everybody watching. I do this every month. This is my live hangout with my Patreon patrons. Everybody gets to watch, but you can join in the fun. And this was a real fun one this month. You can join in the fun by joining my Patreon campaign. If you watch my channel, if you watch my videos and you like what I do and you can afford it, you think I'm worth it, you can join the campaign and support my channel at patreon.com/Steve Shives. And one of the little perks you get is you get a chance to participate in this every month.
We had two this month. It was the blue moon of patron hangouts.
Yes, because I fucked up and missed one in December. So thanks to all of you here and all of you who have been here and had to leave for supporting the channel, for being patrons. I couldn't do it without you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and the rest of you watching. who are part of the Patreon campaign. I really, really appreciate you guys. And we'll do this again next month. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Bye, everybody.